Welcome to The Big Question. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. At a time when governments across the world are moving towards green mobility, the state of Maharashtra may have hit the brakes with its recent budget announcement. Maharashtra's Deputy Chief Minister Ajit Pawar has delivered the state budget for 2025-26, and some of the announcements may make people rethink a purchase of a vehicle with cleaner fuel. The budget unveiled a series of motor vehicle tax hikes that would impact every category from passenger vehicles to those used for construction. But it is also the tax on clean vehicles like CNG, LPG and electric vehicles that is raising questions. According to the budget announcements, a 1% tax hike has been proposed for CNG four-wheelers. Currently, the tax levied on such cars is between 7 to 9%. Based on the vehicle and price, of course. Electric vehicles priced above 30 lakh rupees will now be taxed at 6%. Earlier, this tax was 0, so there's a straight-up 6% hike there. The hike in taxes will add to the state coffers, while the 1% hike in CNG and LPG vehicles is expected to add 150 crores of additional revenue. The tax on electric vehicles would add an additional 170 crores to the state's revenue. The proposed changes are set to take effect from the 1st of April. Now, the question here is, at a time when states are incentivizing the shift to cleaner fuels, why tax them further? This move also marks a shift from Maharashtra's own policy in 2021 for electric vehicles, where the state promised no road and RTO tax for all EVs and a 15% subsidy on EVs purchased in Maharashtra, amongst other incentives. It also comes at a time when India, especially Maharashtra, is gearing up for a bigger electric future. Now, for a second, let's put aside Tesla and their anticipated entry into India. Ironically, their first showroom is supposed to be in Maharashtra and Mumbai's Bandra Kurla complex. But will this green tax dampen the momentum of the state's EV transition? After all, Maharashtra accounts for the second highest EV sales in the country, contributing over 12% of total sales. Will the recent budget announcements then penalize clean mobility, and will auto companies, which are already seeing a slowdown, pass on the cost of hikes to consumers? That is the big question we're asking today. Is a green tax on CNG and EV vehicles in Maharashtra justified? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Horma Surabji, editor of Autocore India, Amar Jatin Sheth, secretary at FADA and MD of Group Shaman, Sudhir Krishna, former Secretary, Ministry of Urban Development, also joining us on the show. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for your time today. Hormaz, let me begin by your response to this. The thinking may be that yes, the state needs funds. So much is being spent also on traffic decongestion in the same budget. Will a 6% increase on EV for 30 lakhs and above really make that much of a difference?
Well, I think clearly, what they're doing is they're targeting the luxury end of the market. Clearly, the mass EV segment is so far untouched. I think the logic clearly is that, if you look at it, a 0% road tax on cars which crossed 1.5, 2 crores vis-a-vis, road tax of 7-8% on CNG vehicles, let's say optically it didn't kind of add up over there. So I think that's why they're kind of, because these are luxury vehicles, they're adding a tax over there. But I think we have to look at it holistically. Pollution, it doesn't depend on the price of the car. It depends what comes out of your tailpipe, and EVs have no tailpipe emission. And, across the board, I think they should be encouraged. They should have as little taxation as possible, especially at a time when EVs have been struggling due to issues of charging infrastructure and things like that. So I think, maybe it's a bit too early to have come in with this. I can understand the logic or the principle behind it, taxing cars above 30 lakhs, because obviously it's the luxury end of the vehicle, which are also benefiting from these SOPs. And clearly those people can afford to pay a little bit more for the overall on-road price of the car. Coming to CNG, again, it's a marginal tax, but I think we've seen a huge growth in CNG over here. For the first time, CNG has actually overtaken diesel, which is in a way great from, let's say, an environment point of view. So I think, from the government's point of view, they feel that, hey, look, there's a lot of growth over here, and obviously they want to take the extra benefit of that into the profit.
My question, Hormaz, is that directionally, because taxes are, of course, a function of improving the treasury of any government, but it is also directionally telling you how policymakers are thinking.
So that's what I said. Directionally, it's not in the right direction, because clearly you are taxing, whether they're expensive or not, vehicles which are cleaner in terms of their emissions, and leaving, let's say, I'm not saying they should tax them either, but leaving, let's say, petrol and diesel untouched, whilst you're taxing EVs and CNG, which is at the definitely the cleaner end of the powertrain spectrum. That way, it's not very logical. But I think that's I think the way one should look at it, because clearly at the end of the day today, what we are fighting for is reduction of CO2. That's the most important thing, and I think EVs are the best way to achieve that.
I mean, look at the air quality in Mumbai right now. And on many days worse than even Delhi.
Exactly.
Is this really the direction we should be headed in? Mr. Sheth, just want to get your view in. Hormaz pegged this as a tax or an additional tax on luxury. But if you look at some of the recent launches for electric vehicles, especially in the SUV segmentation, at the higher end, or if a fully loaded kind of a car, is 30 lakhs now luxury?
Yeah, I think the definition of luxury, of course, is changing, and even with the entry-level cars having high luxury end features. So I think, though I feel 30 lakhs is a decent amount of money, and maybe in segmentation wise, even when we analyze our data, about 30 lakhs is 25 lakhs rather is considered as luxury. So I think in the definition of luxury, this might be okay.
Yeah, but that's not quite the point, is it, Mr. Sheth? My point is that what is the kind of impact that you think will be seen on appetite to go out and buy either CNG-fitted vehicles or electric vehicles or passenger vehicles overall, which is already seeing a bit of a pain?
So you're right, the automotive has been seeing a bit of a pain since the last few months. I think not only automotive, other macros also, but I honestly, in my opinion, I don't think this 1% on the CNG is going to move the needle too much. The people still who are buying it for their economical reasons will continue to. It will not swing it to the petrol or a diesel, because the unit economics of a CNG versus a petrol is totally different. It's maybe at half the cost. So this 1% there, in my view, will get absorbed. In the EV space, it is on the luxury. The 6% is on the luxury end. So they're ensuring that the early adopters for the EV still continue adopting the EV. But yes, it is a step maybe which will make people rethink. I think it's going to be wait and watch, but I don't think the CNG will make too much of a difference. The EV, I think there might be a slight pullback for a hesitation.
Maybe. Sudhir Krishna, let me get your view from a policy perspective. Your former Secretary Ministry of Urban Development. Does it make sense to tax passenger vehicles to this extent when, again, you are building more and more roads to decongest the city? There is a massive budget, some 60,000 crores plus budgeted for decongestion. Huge projects there. That means you will have more cars on the road. They may as well be cleaner ones.
Well, I think we need less cars on the road, no doubt. And that is why the government is promoting the mass transportation system through metro rail systems and, bus-based systems. But true, people require automobiles also. So the question is that whether the automobile should be taxed at all. After all, government needs revenue, Every government, Maharashtra government is no exception. They are spending increasing amount on liabilities like salaries of the staff, and then pension liabilities are mounting, and then they have taken a variety of loans. The loans have to be serviced. From where the money will come? Somewhere somebody has to pay. So automobile owners are generally higher-end automobile owners should be willing to part with some amount as taxes to help the government raise resources. I think there is nothing wrong in that. And talking of as the other panelists have said that yes, that on the EV, there is the tax rate is only on higher end vehicles and 30 lakh and not. If you are buying 30 lakh worth of vehicle, then spending 1 or 2 lakh more. Those people who are spending 30 lakh may as well pay 1 or 2. That too for the government to use for infrastructure development. That is one. And on CNG also, I understand that almost all states are charging, motor vehicle tax or road tax on the CNG vehicles, almost at par with the petrol vehicles. Only diesel vehicles are, generally speaking, facing higher rate of taxes.
Okay, now let me come. Let me get Hormaz's view on that point. Why passenger vehicle owners are in that sense low-hanging fruit, right? If you're looking to raise more taxes for infrastructure projects, is that justified?
Well, I think I mean, to be honest, let's be honest, these tax hikes are not really very seismic to kind of really move the needle, as Amar Sheth said. Especially on CNG, 1% is okay, and obviously, I'm more on the principle of it that, you are taxing the cleaner spectrum. Even EVs, 6% luxury EV buyers, that's not going to impact him so much. And in any case, Maharashtra was one of the lowest as far as road taxes go, 0 on EVs. Not many states give that still. But I think coming back to the point on yes, I think the private motorist has always been the low-hanging fruit, because you can't tax a two-wheeler guy, transportation you can't tax, it has other implications, inflation, stuff like that. So I think, to raise revenue, obviously the motorist has always been at the receiving end. And let's be honest, I think today we face some of the highest road taxes ever. I mean, if you look at some of the categories, we go up to, with the GST and, the cess added on top of that, we go up to 43, 48, and maybe in some cases even 50%. So it's taxed high enough. I think the motor, it's a historic thing. It is seen as...
Hormaz, we need to put this into perspective. So you are right, taxed high enough. There is a whole industry. Trying to move ahead on the premise that more and more people will buy cars. As a percentage of population, we are still quite underrepresented. And here you have more and more taxes loaded on.
Well, I think that the taxes is one of the things overall that has kind of held back the growth of the auto industry. There are two things. One is also per capita income that has to grow dramatically for motorization to really take off. We are still very low if you see our penetration rates of motorization globally. So it's really a function of affordability, which has been a big problem always. And I think the worry is that 2025, the industry is looking at, let's say, a very difficult period. There's going to be practically very little growth, no growth, or maybe even negative growth. Let's see how things pan out. Things haven't got off to a great start. So I think this increase in tax, however small or however big, it hasn't really come at the right time either.
Okay, just to give a perspective of what other states are doing. Frankly, it's not about 6% moving from 7 to 8% or 8 to 9%. It's what others are doing. And then what is this direction that we're seeing? So for example, according to Delhi's EV policy 2.0, they aim to make 95% of vehicles electric by 2027. They have a dedicated electric vehicle fund to set up, which has been set up, supported by green taxes, pollution cess, etc. They aim to replace all CNG, autos, taxis, and light commercial vehicles with electric vehicles. They're offering purchase incentives for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Meanwhile, in Gujarat, the road tax and registration fee has been waived for electric two-wheelers and four-wheelers. There are subsidies with incentives from 20,000 rupees onwards for two-wheelers, 1.5 lakhs for four-wheelers in the state of Gujarat. Are you going to start seeing people buying from Gujarat and driving them into Maharashtra? I don't know. There's 25% capital subsidy in Gujarat on equipment and machinery for EV charging stations. In Uttar Pradesh, meanwhile, there's subsidies with incentives from 5,000 rupee onwards for two-wheelers, up to 1 lakh rupees for four-wheelers. They've allocated 100 crore rupees for two-wheeler subsidies and 250 crores for four-wheeler subsidies. So I just wanted to put this out there to give perspective. And then with that, let me come to you, Mr. Krishna. You said, okay, if a government needs taxes, why not tax those who drive vehicles. It's not about 30 lakhs luxury, honestly. It's about whether we're really going to have an electric vehicle revolution in this country, which has happened in large parts of the world. If we start taxing something which is so nascent, as it is, I have to pay a premium to buy an electric vehicle versus, a traditional engine, a combustible engine.
Well, I still feel that taxation on motor vehicles is in our country situation. Somebody has to pay tax, and majority of the population is not able to own the car and not able to pay many of the taxes. Income tax is also paid by insular population. So motor vehicle owners should be willing to pay some tax. That is in general I am saying. Now talking of electric vehicles, see on the GST front there is already a rebate across the country on the electric vehicles. And therefore that benefit is there. Only the question of motor vehicle tax levied by the state government, that issue remains. And electric vehicles, the technology has improved over time. In the last 10 years, technology has improved and the operational cost of electric vehicles is pretty low. So the cost is recovered substantially by operating the vehicle. Those who are using the vehicle properly, adequately, they will recover the cost in a couple of years' time, extra cost paid on account of electric vehicle. Even the cost of electric vehicles has come down substantially over the last 5-7 years. So therefore, when it is because of the government's policies only, they give a lot of support to manufacturers of the electric vehicle, and even the import duties on the components are also having been given subsidies. So all put together, stand alone, the motor vehicle tax alone should not be seen as what the government is doing for.
No, but those subsidies, who is getting those subsidies? I just want you to come in on this, Mr. Sheth, as well. The take that if a government has to tax, someone has to be taxed. There's so many schemes, social schemes, etc. in Maharashtra as well. Deficit on the budget. Someone has to be taxed. Why not those who drive cars?
So I think almost touched upon it very well. Somehow the auto industry is often classified in the same segment as a sin good. So, the impact of taxation is always higher. GST is up to 50%. And if you add the registration tax on a petrol or diesel, we go up to 65-70% as a total tax that is paid by a consumer here. So traditionally, yes, it has always been there, but I think India is now developing much quicker and if we are moving toward a developed economy stage, I don't think an auto industry or vehicle owner should be bearing the brunt of this tax. There is a lot more avenue to collect taxation from. And this tax is needed, I agree, to do the development, but it's something that we have to address. It's a much larger question.
Okay, so then what really is that question then? Harmaz, let me come to you on that point. As far as the industry goes and India's electric vehicle ambitions go, it's very clear that our focus is on electrifying vehicles on a mass transit scale, or then two-wheeler, three-wheeler. The passenger vehicles, I mean, it's not moving the needle here or there. How do you juxtapose that with what key car companies or auto companies are doing right now, which are focusing so heavily on electric vehicles?
Yeah, so I think, clearly the fastest adoption has been in the two-wheeler space, especially scooters. Very, very high adoption already, I think 14-15%. I think with passenger vehicles, it's much lower. It was 2%, but it's set to jump right now. I think, we've got to see this in the perspective that if you look at it, and as Mr. Krishna said, at the central level, the GST delta or the difference between an EV and an ICE vehicle is huge. It's absolutely massive, probably more than most other countries. Now, the logic is that, I think we're in an early stage of electrification. So the idea is to don't tax the vehicle. Let's make it as easy as possible for people to buy. Price has always been one pain point. So try to make that as attractive as possible with a lower rate of tax. And we are seeing that adoption happening. Frankly, now I think 25, I would expect the penetration to double because we've got so many EVs in the market. Typically, what happens is that when you reach 10, 14, or 10 to 15% penetration, that's when governments start rolling back the subsidies, on EVs. So right now we've got a fantastic subsidy at a central level. Now, individual states, they have their own policies, and they have to raise money, and clearly they see that the vehicle is the easiest way to do that, and that's what a lot of states do. Some of them want to see more EV penetration. So really, I think, as we've seen, it goes from state to state. I just wish there was a more unified approach.
Yeah.
My thing is that keep the taxes low until the penetration reaches 10%, because whatever you have to get the CO2 out of the atmosphere. That's really the public enemy number one. And EVs are the way to do it. And I think the states and the center have to kind of come together and realize that let's put as little tax as possible on EVs, so we see that sharp rate of growth in EVs as quickly as possible.
Mr. Krishna, any response to that point about getting CO2 out of the atmosphere and using electric vehicles as a way to do that? Why disincentivize when the whole proportion of people who have electric vehicles is already so small?
I think we have to see the package of all the services, needs for resources, and the options for resources. So I think there is not much choice in the state government. What kind of tax menu they have got? They have got only the now the GST has taken away the source of revenue, which was sales tax. And then because they can't independently decide on the GST rates, when the GST tremendous relief has been given, very nominal GST on the electric vehicles, and therefore that loss is on the states. After that, what is the next item? Next item is the state excise duty on liquors, and then stamp duties and motor vehicle tax, and very sundry other taxes. Mineral laws, whichever state gets mineral royalties or things like that. So the option of the state government to raise resources, and people expect a lot from state government, they should also, and state government wish to do many things, so many subsidy schemes, free midday meal scheme or free textbooks and transportation subsidy and buses. So from where the resources will come? So some sacrifice has to be made, and there are many options being pursued for reducing the atmospheric pollution through the CO2 greenhouse gas emission issues. This is not the only one. On this also, the vehicles, the more than 15-year-old vehicles have to be discarded. So that is also one such step. So I think a small contribution by way of taxation, it doesn't mean that the government is discouraging people from buying electric vehicles. It is just that while you do, and a lot of benefits are coming also for the electric vehicle and CNG vehicles. So a small contribution.
Yeah, but those aren't really getting passed on. I'm just wondering, Mr. Sheth, if I can get a perspective from you very quickly on what the demand is like for electric vehicles. Are you seeing that? I'm talking about four-wheeler passenger. Are you seeing that consistently improve?
I think the early adoption phase is probably still going on. We are still having people who are wanting to experiment with the electric vehicles. Yes, the demand is going up. However, there was a blip when the subsidies were withdrawn, and now with the new FAME scheme. So two-wheeler scooters certainly, I think, is a segment which is totally very well captured with electric two-wheelers, but also on the commercial vehicle side, the three-wheelers, I think, is a segment people are ignoring, which has now a 60% of EV adoption. So I think the people who are seeing the commercial benefits of EVs are certainly jumping. But as the infrastructure improves, charging points improve, we will see much more growth here.
Okay, just on an ironical note, when the Tesla, I'm not saying if anymore, drives in to India, even if there are lower duties negotiated at the center, they drive into Maharashtra, and definitely there will be a 6% additional tax on them. So that's the other end of it. Anyway, thank you to all of you for joining us on the debate today. Should governments be adding taxes on electric vehicles at a time when we're still getting people to first buy enough vehicles, look at the auto numbers and it's quite dismal, and then secondly, improve adoption of EVs? Or should we look at it in this way, that if someone can pay 30 lakh rupees for a car or an electric vehicle, why not 1 or 2 lakhs more? This is definitely not something which is being incentivized from the government level. Well, that's all the time we have on The Big Question. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow, same time, same place.